If you already thought the Democratic 2020 candidates were a frightened pack of cocktail weenies, get a load of Beto, a guy so sturdy, he's as sturdy as a gummy worm. You want pathetic? Here's pathetic. He felt he had to apologize over a sick joke he made about his wife. Now, before we play this joke, you might want to scoot the kids out of the room.
I just got a call from my wife, Amy, who's back in El Paso, Texas, where she is raising, sometimes with my help, Ulysses, who's 12 years old, Molly, who's 10, and their little brother, Henry, who is 8 years old.
He apologized for that. In case you missed it, he apologized for, quote, sometimes with my help, end quote. He apologized for that. Okay, here's a quick mental exercise. Imagine a guy apologizing for that ever becoming president. Now, he felt he had to apologize because, quote, people were outraged, meaning 3 cranks on Twitter. But in the era of scalp first, think later, humor's the first to go. One CNN.com article claims many female Democratic operatives were activists, were triggered. For once, media, can we get a head count on many? Seriously, what kind of person gets offended over that? Wouldn't the right response be, look, it's a joke. If you can't take a joke, we're going to have a real problem when I become president. Sadly, Beto went the other way.
Not only will I not say that again, but I'll be much more thoughtful going forward in the way that I talk about our marriage and also the way in which I acknowledge the truth of the criticism that I have enjoyed white privilege.
Welcome to the modern liberal man, a Snuggie full of guilt and fear. Notice how he threw in that white privilege just in case. The virtue signaler now brands our economy racist.
I think the only way to meet some of these historic challenges is to be able to use this engine of capitalism. It won't be government intervention or policy alone that makes it possible. Now, having said that, it is clearly an imperfect, unfair, unjust, and racist capitalist economy.
Okay, now try other economies. You know, the ones that aren't as awesome in eradicating poverty. Our racist system has done more to help humanity than any ever. But what would he know about economies? He inherited and married his money, making him a perfect lefty, relying on the wealth of others to support his silly ideas, oversized ego, and absurd hand gestures. But hey, it sure beats a real job. All right, Juan, you and I sit here and we have made comments about being married, right? We have made jokes about what it's like to be married. For you, a long time. For me, not so long. He apologized for that.
Yeah, I thought it was weak, unnecessary. But I'm a big booster of fathers, and so I do think if the idea is that you got to be involved, you can't just be on the road and say I'm making money, I'm bringing in the bread, so baby, you take care of the kids. I think that's out of line. But I'm a big booster of fatherhood. But I think right now what you're seeing on the left is a reaction, which is that they feel that they've got to somehow conform, especially in a time when a slight slip up can make big news and knock you out of the race. But to my mind, if this is about Trump going after his hand gestures, people saying he's PC and a snowflake, hey, Republicans, wake up. This guy just raised $600 million.
No, 600
million.
6 million.
Jesus.
6 million. I should say $6 million.
$600 million.
But I was thinking in terms of how he beat Bernie Sanders. He's way ahead of Amy Klobuchar, who's also raised substantial amounts of money, and even farther ahead of Elizabeth Warren. So to me, raising this money was a surprise, Greg, because I didn't know that I knew he had raised $80 million in the Texas race against Cruz, and I think you wrote that off to Cruz being a less than great candidate.
Yes.
But this now is against fellow Democrats, and people say, we don't know him, we don't know his positions. Guess what? Democrats like this guy. He has real energy, and you're seeing some of the Obama people now flock to his campaign.
I don't know, Dana. You know, the women were upset because They couldn't make that joke. Do you actually believe people are sincerely outraged?
I was thinking about, though, I've made the joke in reverse. It's not a child, right? But like, I post all these great pictures of Jasper on Instagram. I wrote a book about Jasper.
It's debatable that they're great.
Who takes care of Jasper?
Yeah, who takes care
of...
of...
It's not me. Peter.
Peter
is taking care of Jasper all the
Wow.
time, and I will not apologize.
He's a stay-at-home dog owner.
I will not apologize for that. He does work.
You're the Yoko.
He works from
You're
home.
the Yoko. He's the John.
Exactly. He works from home.
Yes.
The thing about the other part of this is that there was a lot of people saying, oh, he had such a bad rollout because Beto had to apologize and things. Well, one, there's the money. But also, arguably, Kirsten Gillibrand had a much worse rollout.
Right.
She officially announced this weekend with the video, and literally no one's talking about it. So I think that his rollout is better because here we are. We're leading our show with it.
Jesse, you know what? I think he's stealing your I am Waters, this is my world thing.
I know,
except he's doing it in every scene.
As a guy that likes hand gestures, I have to marvel at some of these. Here's a new one that I didn't know existed. This is, okay? And then there's the other one where he's talking about his wife, Amy. He goes, Amy, I'm not sure what that represents. But I also don't understand why he apologized. He was actually praising Amy.
Yes.
And what is he supposed to do? He's running for president. He needs to get outside of his house to run for president. Is he going to take the kids out of El Paso and put them in school in Iowa so he can co-parent in Iowa? I don't understand. He's like Gumby. That's how soft this guy is. I don't also like the white privilege comment. I, as a white man, understand I probably have privileges that I don't even realize I have. But to say that race is determinative of success, I think is unfair to all the other things like grit, determination, good looks, things like that. And to point and look at a successful white person and say, hey, he got that because he's white, discounts all the hard work that got there.
He has a different kind of privilege. He has rich parents and rich wife privilege, which is pretty good privilege. Emily, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I agree with you that I think, beware if he actually assumes that office for someone who can apologize and bend with a wind like that for something so little. I think that the media, though, is covering for him. He's running on charisma and personal narrative. I see none of it.
You think it didn't work before?
I think it's ridiculous. And I think, the whole, sitting on the story for 2 years or whatever, that group that he was a part of, that was a precursor to Anonymous. And he said, oh, I was really just on the margins. And his quote was like, I wanted to be the cool kid. I wanted to be as smart as them and whatever. And that's what I see that he's doing here. There's no substance, but for some reason, it's really spitballing and it's snowballing. And yet, Bernie Sanders just raised just a little bit behind him. So I don't think we should count him out on the left. And also, he shattered records with the Senate race, too. Like you said, the fundraising, and he still didn't win.
There are two things. One, apparently there was a reporter that hid an article about Beto O'Rourke until after the Senate race, and the excuse was he was writing a book. Which is kind of interesting. And then we have Joe Biden accidentally announcing he's running for president. Only accidentally.
I'm told I get criticized by the new left. I have the most progressive record of anybody running for the if anybody who would run. I didn't mean it. Than anybody who would run.
Why is he waiting?
Soft launch.
It's pretty soft. I have to defend Joe. I think what he was saying is the United States Senate. Because he's been running for the Senate for, 3 decades? That's what it was.
Look, he's run. It's a foregone conclusion. I think he has the luxury of taking his time. So I don't worry about that with Joe. I think the bigger issue for him is, and this comes back to something we're touching on with Beto about white privilege and all the like, is he going to be viewed as an older white male, or can he catch up? I think most Democrats, especially in Iowa, just want someone who can beat Donald Trump. But to your point about Beto's comment about race and privileged white males, Jesse, when you go back and look at American history, look at real estate in this country, segregated neighborhoods, how wealth is built. Look at the New Deal and who got excluded from the New Deal, typically agriculture workers, people who are in the black people.
I would agree with that, Juan, but I would also say there's a lot of very poor, white, working-class people in this country that look around and say, what privilege?
Yeah, right.
What are you talking about?
Right, but there's no question about the historical disadvantage of being black that compounds that whatever disadvantage there was for poor whites.
Then you got to figure out what the solution is, and I'm skeptical of what the solutions are that are being offered from that side. I have a few answers myself. I'll share them with you during the break.
Thank you.